Hello, Internet. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jared, or Mr. Richardson if you're my students. I'm a martial arts instructor, amongst other things. I've been training for 23 years. I've only been teaching for my own students, I've only been teaching for 3 years. But in today's video, I want to talk a little bit about some of my favorite martial art myths or misunderstandings. As you can imagine, there's a lot of these going around. Perpetuated probably by martial artists. So let's dive into it. Number one, this one I heard a lot more as a kid. Haven't really heard a lot of it recently, just based on the pure silliness. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard this. That if you take the palm of your hand and you hit somebody right in the nose upwards at an angle, you can jam their nose bone into their brain and kill them instantly. So let's just instantly debunk this. So I'm going to give you a very small anatomy lesson. For those of you who don't know, the nose, there's not a bone in here. It's all cartilage, and cartilage is made up of a protein that's mostly collagen. The only nasal bone that there is this little ski jump part right here, and that's fused to your skull. It's maybe a couple centimeters. It's not a whole lot. So when people are talking about jamming their nose bone up into their brain, what they're talking about, I think, is pushing somebody's nose up through their brain. Why I say this is a myth? Because it doesn't happen. We would be hearing about this quite often. The cartilage is soft, it's squishy, and most of the time it breaks sideways or it just kind of crushes inwards. It doesn't go up into people's brains. Sorry to spoil it for you. It just doesn't. Feel free to look on YouTube. There's great videos of people really getting their nose smashed. The one I'm really thinking of is Rich Franklin versus Anderson Silva. Anderson has his hands behind his head, knees him right in the nose with the knee going at this upward angle, and it completely crushes Rich Franklin's nose. It didn't drive up into his brain and kill him, but it completely crushed his nose. So the whole pushing the nose bone up into the brain, it's a load of garbage. Don't believe it. I'm not saying it's impossible, because anything's possible, but it's not very likely. And by not very likely, I mean I don't think it's ever happened. Number two, this one of my students brought up to me, and I have definitely heard this before, which is people say, boy, you're putting in all that work, you're training all that time in case you get attacked. Like, that seems like a lot of work for a potential being attacked. Here in the United States, especially here in Vermont, we have a very, very low crime rate in Vermont. So the odds of you being physically attacked here are pretty low. But this is where I would say more of a misunderstanding, not a myth, comes into play. And the misunderstanding is that all you do in martial arts is train punches and kicks. Now, granted, that's a big part of what we do, and we do train a lot of self-defense, but that's not what people are just getting out of it. You're getting balance, you're getting in better shape, you're getting a community, you're getting a group of people you hang out with, you're getting like-minded individuals, you're getting stress relief, you're getting breath control. There's so many aspects of the martial arts benefits besides just learning to punch and kick. Now, don't get me wrong, punching and kicking is kind of the foundation of what we do, but there's so many other benefits. Balance. And a story about balance, my martial arts training saved me from at least a broken collarbone. When I was younger, I had a dirt bike and was not very good at riding it, but drove it over a very steep sand berm, and as I went over it, it flipped me over the handlebars, so I went right over the top of it. But because I have been training martial arts and have fallen a lot, what I managed to do, without thinking, of course, was just shoulder roll after I went over the handlebars, and I got up facing my bike in a fighting stance just because that's how I've been trained. I've done that move many, 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 many times. So thankfully for me, the only thing that was broken was my clutch on my dirt bike, but it saved me a lot of injury or a lot of recovery time. So just to think that people are only training martial arts to punch and kick and defend themselves is definitely an outsider view. Once you start training, you know a bit more. You just learn more about what the martial arts is all about. So that's another one. This one, the next one, I used to hear a lot as a kid as well, and I still kind of hear it from some adults. And again, a lot of these are coming from people who have zero martial art training, zero martial art experience. Is, oh well, you can't use your martial arts, right? You can't use it. Like, you train, but you're not supposed to use it, which to me is hilarious, because it's like, why am I not supposed to use it? I've put in all this work, acquired all this skill and technique, and if I get attacked, I'm supposed to what? Just like take a butt kicking? Like, no, that's silly. Again, I think this is a misunderstanding. I think what people seem to me, or I don't know, but my interpretation of this is, especially as a self-defense stylist, you don't start fights. Period. And I think as a traditional martial artist, for the most part, you don't start fights. We finish them. So we don't use our martial arts to bully, to intimidate, to otherwise harass people. Now, if somebody comes up to us in our space, put their hands on us, cross that line, at least in our school, we are ready, willing, and able to use every tool in our arsenal to make sure we are the ones who get home safe. I tell my students this all the time. If anybody is foolish enough to put their hands on you, it is your right to make sure you're the one who gets home safe. I don't really care what happens to the attacker. If you're attacking one of my students, now granted, most of my students are young, so if you're attacking one of my students, you kind of deserve what you're going to get anyway. So the whole concept of you're not allowed to use your martial arts is just silly, and again, I think it's just a misunderstanding. This next one used to drive me crazy when I was in school, and I think a lot of school-age kids will say it, maybe even some adults. I haven't ran into it a lot as an adult, but when I was younger, I used to get this all the time. People find out you train martial arts. Oh, you do martial arts, huh? Cool, do a flip. Really? And my response to that was always, I'm a martial artist, not a gymnast. To me, that's so insane. You wouldn't go up to a gymnast and say, show me a 1-2 combo. We don't do flips. I know there are some martial arts styles, the XMA, the Hollywood martial art style, they do a lot of acrobatic stuff, they do a lot of flips. In our self-defense system, we don't do flips because I can't envision a self-defense situation where doing a flip would be beneficial. So, just kind of silly. Yeah, that one's crazy. And then last but not least, this one is my absolute favorite, and I must admit I am guilty of perpetuating this because I think it's hilarious, which is, oh, after you get your black belt, you have to register your hands as a lethal weapon, right? And I go, oh yeah, of course, yeah, I got to go down to the courthouse, and I got to carry my papers around with me all the time. Hilarious. 100% not true. And in the state of Vermont, I don't need a license to carry a loaded concealed firearm. If I don't need a license to carry a loaded concealed firearm, I certainly don't need a license to carry my fists. But I love it. I love that it kind of just furthers the mystique of martial artists to people who don't train. So that one I do definitely answer dishonestly because I think it's hilarious, and I think that one should kind of be perpetuated. It's 100% not true. Anybody who tells you that is somebody like me who's trolling you. Is not true. We don't have to register our hands and feet as lethal weapons, but it sounds so cool, doesn't it? It sounds so cool. So these were just 5 of my favorite martial art myths and or misunderstandings about the martial arts. Feel free to comment about what your favorite martial art myth is, and if I can drum up a bunch more of these, I'll make another video about some more of my favorite martial art myths. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a great night. We'll see you on the next one.